Hello everyone, I'm John Evans. Welcome to another episode of One on One. Brantley Gilbert is a country rock star. He's had 5 number-1 hit singles, 3 number-1 hit albums. He's won countless country music awards. He's played hundreds of sold-out concerts in his career, and he's toured with some of the biggest names in country music. But like a lot of artists, the pandemic has kept Brantley from playing as many live shows as he's wanted the past couple of years. But he has some new music, and he's starting his 2022 tour right here in Wilmington, April the 7th at the North Carolina Azalea Festival. He's going to kick off the concert series for the 2022 North Carolina Azalea Festival here in Wilmington, Thursday, April 7th at the Live Oak Amphitheater. Country rock star Brantley Gilbert, welcome to the One on One with John Evans podcast.
Hey, John, I appreciate you having me, my friend.
Thank you so much. How excited are you, Brantley, to be playing live at one of the biggest events in southeastern North Carolina?
Well, I can tell you this, man. We're really excited just to be back to work in general. But any chance we get to come to your state is always an awesome time, man. And Azalea Fest is one of these that you hear about. Everybody in the business plays and looks forward to, and looks forward to the opportunity. And we're ready to get there and party with you guys.
Now, I looked at your website and BrantleyGilbert.com, and this is going to be one of your first live shows in a while. How itching are you to get out there and perform live again? Because everything I read, Brantley Gilbert loves to be up on stage and loves to be performing live.
Yes, sir. I'm a road dog, I guess, so to speak. We came up a little bit old school, and we just kind of beat the pavement up. It's what we've always done. And you know, COVID comes along and puts me at home for a lot longer than I'm used to or programmed to be at this point. So I think I'm about as ready to get back out as my wife is ready for me to get back out. I think she married me with the understanding that I'd be gone a lot, and that hasn't necessarily been the case recently. So yeah, man, we're excited to get back at it and excited to come to your state. It's going to be a great time.
Are you the same guy on stage or off stage as you are on stage, Brantley?
Absolutely. Yes, sir. That's one thing that anybody that knows me will tell you is it's pretty much what you see is what you get 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 a year.
You released a couple of songs last year, How to Talk to Girls and Gone But Not Forgotten. I want to get to each one of those here in a moment, but you know, it seems like both of those are very reflective songs. You're reflecting on being a husband and a dad, and then you're reflecting on one of your family members and then members of the military who lost their lives. Did they come from a special place maybe while you weren't on the road during COVID? Did you have a lot of time to reflect during this pandemic, and is that where this music came from?
Some of it. I will say that I've heard of people that did pretty well with the pandemic. I was not one of those. So I would be lying if I told you that the creative side of my career was on point during COVID. But I can tell you that we got a lot of work done on the record during that period of time. And, you know, How to Talk to Girls is a song that we wrote a while back at my farm. And it was one of those, you know, we wrote when Bray was really, really young. She's 2 now. But it's a special song to me. You know, it obviously hits really close to home. And, you know, I know there are a lot of dads out there like me that right now, I think my main struggle with talking to her is telling her no. You know, that song talks about that, but she's kind of got daddy wrapped around that little finger. But I can say that a lot of this album is reflective, is reminiscent for a lot of reasons. One, you know, we like to rock a little bit, and let's just say that in the last 7 or 8 years of my life, you know, I've kind of the married with kids thing has kind of been the deal. So things are a little more calm than they used to be. So to get into that side of things, sometimes we have to dig back a little bit. But it's an exciting record, man. I'm really excited to get it out.
When are we going to hear the new record?
I wish I knew an exact date. And if I did, I promise you I would tell you. We're chomping at the bit to get it out there. We've been working on it for the past couple of years. I start working on albums as soon as we release albums. So it's always been a long time coming for me. But this one in particular, we've got some great features on there. I wish I could tell you more about. I checked before we called, and we have some really exciting things in the headlights for us, and we're really looking forward to going after it.
I know you've been married a while, and I know you got two young ones, but take it from a guy who's been married 35 years with two girls who are now in their 30s and their 20s. You never stop learning how to talk to girls, okay? It doesn't get any easier on down the line.
You know what? I think there's some comfort in that. You know, a little bit of terror, but also a little bit of comfort. I appreciate that, man. And congrats on 35 years. I tell you, this day and age, that's real love, and you don't see that a whole lot anymore. So that's awesome, and that's motivating.
Yeah, I married a saint. I tell everybody with the hours that I've worked in TV news, I married a saint, and it wouldn't have worked had I not married a saint. And Sheila is my best friend and also my partner in life. And it's fun. I know you found somebody who is just as special to you, and you wrote this as a love letter, not just to your daughter, but also to your wife.
Yes, sir. I guess there's always been a bit of a communication disconnect between us and girls. And, you know, it's kind of a funny thing between she and I. You know, it's that the song kind of came from on her end. It was, you know, about me communicating better. And so that kind of went into the how to talk to girls things, telling her, like, I hear you and I'm trying, but it's, you know, hopefully I'll get there one of these days. But, you know, man, I think that's part of what makes, you know, being married and being a dad so special is that we are learning every day, right? It's
yep, that's exactly it. You never stop learning. One question that I did have for you, and I've always wondered as I've talked to different artists, you know, the writing credits on that song. Brock Berryhill, Brian Wayne Davis, Brandon Day, Chase McGill, Josh Phillips, Taylor Phillips, Michael Ray. Did everybody contribute one line, or how does that process work?
So that little group of writers right there, we call the 8-pointers. You know, what that was we took a big trip down to the farm. We're about to take a trip to Texas, actually leave tonight. And there's 13 or 14 riders going there. On this particular trip to my farm in Alabama, there were, I think, eight guys. And it was after, so we were breaking into two different groups for rides during the day. But that night we were all sitting around and everybody was in the room, and it's really hard to discern, like, who threw a word in here, who threw a word in there. So on that one, it was like pretty much everybody who was in the room, like, let's just keep it easy. You know, we'll just put everybody's name down. So, man, it was kind of fun. And it was a way to remember that trip too. You know, I remember specifically, you know, my buddy Brian Davis is there, and he's got girls, and you know, there's several of my rider buddies that were there that have girls, and man, they've been great sounding boards for me, and that's kind of where the song idea started and where we finished it. So,
do you schedule time to write? Is that how, when you're a songwriter? You know, my day, you know, when something comes across the wire, when we get information, I just write it. But when it comes to writing the songs, the music, and the lyrics, do you set aside special time every day to just do your writing? How does that process flow?
I try not to do every day. I've kind of, I guess I'm working on a bit of trying to find a little bit of a balance right now. I know there are guys that do write every day, and some of them multiple times a day. For me, being an artist and a songwriter, that's been a little difficult to do, especially being a husband and a dad. So I think that's part of what I'm learning too, is really how to find a balance. Because, like you said, for a long time, it's kind of been by the, almost by the seat of my pants. I'm just going. And my wife is the opposite. Everything has to be in order and on a schedule. And so I think we're still finding that balance. But I'll tell you this, sometimes you schedule times, sometimes it just comes to you. You may make a note, write something down. And when you're in a write 2-3 days later, you can look through your phone and see that note. And a lot of times I still handwrite stuff. And, some of these guys look at me like I'm a dinosaur, when I walk in the handwrite lyrics. But that's something about handwriting things for me. Just helps me kind of save it up here, I guess.
Yeah, I've often wondered, because you hear some stuff about, one of the things that stuck to me at one point in time was John Lennon and Paul McCartney wrote lyrics to one of their songs on a napkin one day. I would imagine if you just have one of those thoughts, you've got to jot it down at some point, right?
Yes, sir, absolutely. And I've had a couple different experiences where I've lost a good amount of ideas and songs a couple different times, and don't ever want that to happen again. And things are a lot different now. When I first started writing, I had a little tape recorder that an actual tape went in.
Right.
And we'd put a tape in there, hit record, and kind of play into that to make sure we didn't lose song ideas. Now, thank goodness we have these little voice memo things on our phones, and that is absolutely clutch. That thing is a lifesaver. So, I spend a lot of time on the voice recorder and the notepad there.
How about Gone But Not Forgotten? That was a song that is very special to you. You do a lot with the armed forces and the U.S. military, but you also had somebody in your family that touched you in a special way that's also a tribute to, right?
Yes, sir. The video was heavily focused on my grandfather. The song's really about both of them. My mom's dad was a Navy vet, but it's a special song for me. And before we get into it, I have to tell you that I'll be really careful about what I say, because not that I'm ashamed of my political opinion whatsoever. I feel like there are way too many celebrities and singers that think because they're good at what they do that makes them a politician, and I don't want to be another one of those guys. But I will say that when the situation in Afghanistan unfolded, like a lot of Americans, I was not really happy. Working the way we have with the military through the past few years, knowing what I know about it now, I think I'll always feel like that was a responsibility that I skipped out on. And again, that's knowing what I know now. But we try to kind of give any way we can, and any opportunity we have to do that, we take that, because I do feel like we owe these guys and girls. And when that happened, there were some friends of mine and people that have grown close through the years that felt like, the last 20 years was for nothing. And that kind of sentiment surrounded the entire thing. And to me, we lost track of the fact that we lost guys and girls over there, when that whole thing was going down. So every now and then, man, you write a song, weeks, months, years before, and then something happens and it opens the door for it. And I really thought, that was one that maybe some folks needed to hear. So it was a special song for me. We were proud to release it.
And it's gotten huge play, streams. A lot of people really, I think it touched people in a special way. And, sometimes, I can tell you the same kind of things with stories that I've done. Some of the stories I've done you think are going to touch people in one way, and it touches them a different way. And I don't know if that's touched people in a different way than you thought it would, but it really has brought out a lot of emotions in a lot of people across this country.
Absolutely. And, we've seen that with a couple different releases. When we put out One Hell of an Amen, It's just one of my favorite songs we've ever done. That song changed meanings. Even it took on a new meaning for me, 2 or 3 different times. That's just personally, and I wrote it. But it's amazing to hear stories when, people write in or they post something online that just, shares their story or how a song relates to them. I don't think there's anything more rewarding about being a songwriter.
Can you take me back to when you heard one of your songs on the radio for the first time? Do you remember where you were and what your emotions were?
Yes, sir. I was in Athens, Georgia, coming into downtown on Millage Avenue, right beside the Varsity.
Wow, you really do remember, don't you?
Yeah, they played it on 106.1. They played a song called Friday Night that I wrote about, Friday night football. I'm from a small town, graduated with 66 people, and we weren't really good at football, but football was life,
Yep.
Type thing. And she had a good friend that worked at the radio station, and she told me one day what time it was happening, and I got to check it out. So yeah, man, I'll never forget that.
Did you pull over, roll down the window and yell, or just put your hand out the window and in that true Brantley style give one of these?
I think I definitely probably rolled down the window and turned the volume up. Now it's quite the opposite. You hear a song on the radio now and it's you're kind of like, oh God, okay. Because we've heard it so many times, by the time they make it to the radio that, you can be a bit burned on them time to time. But, I will tell you, it's anytime we're with somebody that's invested in, in my life and my career, and a song comes on the radio, and we really are a big family. We're a big team. And I feel like everybody, whether it's, my crew around the house here in Georgia or my guys in Nashville, I feel like, the guys I have close to me that are in my circle, in our situation, I feel like anytime a song comes on, TV or the radio, that, they have a sense of pride too, that kicks in and still makes it special. So
how did you learn when your first number one, Country Must Be Countrywide, how did you learn that had made number one? Did you get a call? What was that like?
Yes, sir. If I remember correctly. Now, this has been a while back, and I quit drinking. December 18th was 10 years ago. I'm allergic to alcohol. I break out in handcuffs, and I needed to make some different decisions. Some different choices for my life. So that was actually one of the things that pushed me in that direction. And we got the call. We were out on the road playing a show somewhere. We were out on tour, and we got the call. We had a good idea it was going to happen going into the day, but you always still watch it till midnight regardless. I'm back and forth with the president of the radio team at the time. He's now the president of Valerie, George Briner, and we're calling each other back and forth. And I feel like when I came back from meet and greet, I probably called him. When I got off stage, I called him. So finally, we talked around midnight, and the charts were closing, and we were sitting at the top spot. And man, it meant a lot to every single person. I was talking about that's in our family, because we truly are a family out there, and it was an amazing feeling, man.
Now, you've had 5 number one singles. You've had 3 records that went to number one. How do you keep challenging yourself? When you've been there and when you've continued to be there like you have and had an astonishing number of success stories, how do you keep challenging yourself, Brantley? How do you get back up and say, I've got to be better than yesterday?
Well, for me, it's about staying motivated and driven. And the best way for me to do that has been to keep my head down. I know a lot of people have asked me through the years, like, when did you know you'd made it? And to me, and in my heart of hearts, like I still legitimately feel like we haven't made it yet. Stopping to smell the roses has never really been my strong suit. Man, I feel like there's only so many hours in a day, and if I keep my head down and my feet moving, I'm not letting anybody, that's in our crew or in our band or their family down. And that's kind of where it all stays. I'm motivated now by being a dad and a husband, and wanting to provide a future for my children, and putting food on the table for a lot of families. So we we kind of just make short-term goals as opposed to long-term. And the minute we accomplish something, we're moving on to the next.
When did you first pick up a guitar?
My mom tells me, I think I went to one guitar lesson maybe around second grade or third grade or something. And I just didn't want to be taught. I wanted to learn. And you know what? That's been kind of a repetitive narrative in my life, where I had to figure something out on my own, instead of taking it from somebody that had been there. Man, I really wish I was better at that. I could have saved some trouble. But yeah, man, it was one of those things where I guess I really wanted to learn on my own. My memory from back then is a little hazy. But my mom said that I used to put on shows for an audience of one. I had a little chest of drawers and a plastic guitar and a plastic microphone. And she said it started way back. And that,
I bet she gave you a standing ovation though when you were done.
I think she told me that it was terrible. I think she was, and my mom doesn't do that. Like, my mom doesn't cuss, anything. She is by the book. Her and Jesus are like this, and I love my mama. But yeah, I think she had to be honest with me and tell me that it did not start out well.
That's funny. You have been very open about some of the toughest times in your life, about some of the struggles that you've overcome. Do you remember when your second or third chance, when you decided to take advantage of it? Because some people get second, third, fourth, fifth chances and never take advantage. You did. And do you remember what caused you to take advantage of that second or third chance and really turn your life around?
I think more than anything, it was being a personal decision, being free from pressures really outside, and a couple true friends. And when I say true friends, you hear in your life that the people that love you the most will stick beside you through whatever. I found that not to necessarily be the case. One of my best friends in the world was a guy that told me, like, hey, man, I love you. My kids love you. My family, we're family. But until you get better, I can't really enable you or support you and that kind of thing. And that was really an eye-opener for me. But man, there were a million things that I didn't pay attention to, that didn't get my attention for so long. And I think I finally got to a point where I just said, you know what, like, I'm not valuing the things in life that I was raised to prioritize and value. And I was raised to one day be a good father and a good husband, and that wasn't even in my peripheral at the time.
Right.
And just wanted to do things different. I wanted to see what I was capable of without it. And that was another big thing. And one of the reasons that I am as open as I am about it is, we talked about the what you see is what you get thing. But I found in my life that, like you said, people relate. Sometimes they hear things that may motivate them or drive them. You know what? Maybe that's in my story. Maybe it's not. Maybe there's a lot of people that listen to this interview and they're like, man, I could have gone without knowing that. But there might be one or two that hear it and go, man, you know what? Like, one of these days I'm going to make that call. I'm going to make it for myself, and I'm going to change things. I'm going to get it done. And for me, I've always been, to a fault, somebody that if I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to die trying to do it. And it was one of those things where I said, you know what, I think I'm going to ease up on the drinking a bit just to kind of make sure I've got a handle on it. And man, I was not able to do that. And that was, man, it was humiliating for me. And it was just, I remember being embarrassed and ashamed and frustrated. And man, I feel like there are a lot of folks like me who have that disease, have that issue. And, it's not so taboo anymore to talk about it. Especially for me, it's a part of my life. It's nothing's going to take it away where it didn't happen. And I'm glad that's the case. I will tell you, as far as being a dad, it's a little concerning because one of these days my kids, as soon as they're old enough to read, they're going to read some stuff about their dad that they're probably not going to understand, and I think I'm going to have some interesting situations coming up as a parent, but man, my wife and I both try to stay healthy in prayer. And that's been the one thing in my life, my one safe place to land. Man, I may be covered in tattoos. I have the mouth of a pirate from time to time, but that's another thing. If you listen to my albums, I'm really upfront about being, a man of faith. And that's something that's important to me. And I think that's really the only way I've been able to go, day by day, and will continue to do so is walking blind, my friend, and trying to stay.
You're a tremendous success story, and I know a lot of people have taken what you've done and used it in their life. And you mentioned tattoos. I can't leave without asking you if you got that Georgia National Championship tattoo you said you were going to get.
Oh yeah, well I got the shirt.
You got the shirt, right?
And then I got to tell you, so and there it is. The tattoo. So it's actually the picture of when the Georgia Bulldog or Uga tried to bite an Auburn player. But I didn't put the Auburn emblem on the side of the helmet because
you don't want an
Auburn player on my arm.
Yeah, you don't want Auburn on your arm, do you?
No, but I do have to tell you this. I did an interview the other night with Aaron Murray and Stetson Bennett, and both quarterbacks for University of Georgia. And I said, guys, before we go any farther with this interview, I think I need to admit something to both of you. And they said, what's that? And I said, I have cussed both of y'all out on multiple occasions. It may have been through a TV, but I feel like it still counted. We had a good laugh. But man, it's one of those things. I know North Carolina knows all about, pride in your teams. And yep. I think we all do all over the country. But there's something special about, our little area of the world and how much college sports mean. And they mean the world to me. And we've been praying for that for a long time. So.
Well, I told you I have a connection to Georgia football too, so we share that from a cousin of mine who was Vince Dooley's ball boy years and years ago. So we share that love for Georgia football.
That's so cool. That's so cool, man. I'd like I said earlier, I'd love to be a fly on the wall in some of that guy's memories. I bet he's got some stories.
Well, Brantley, I sure hope you've enjoyed this interview. I wanted to talk a little bit more, not just about the music, but about the man behind the music, because you are a tremendous success story. And once again, you will kick off the concert series for the 2022 North Carolina Azalea Festival, Thursday, April 7th, Live Oak Amphitheater. Me and a couple thousand of my friends plan to be in the seats that night, Brantley. Look forward to seeing you. Thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to seeing you soon.
A big thank you to Brantley Gilbert for taking time out of his busy schedule to join us for this week's podcast interview. There are some tickets still available for his April 7th show right here in Wilmington at Live Oak Pavilion. Go to ncazaleafestival.org and check out where they are. And Brantley always has tons of extra stuff for his fans on his website. That's BrantleyGilbert.com. We're talking extra videos for his fans, a lot of merchandise, and special versions of his records that fans can buy right there. Now, before we go, I'd like to ask you a favor. Please download and subscribe to the One-on-One with John Evans podcast on whatever app you use to listen to your favorite shows. And if you would be so kind, please leave us a rating or a review. The more we hear from friends like you, the higher we'll be listed on the podcast apps, the better chance we'll have of bringing in even more new listeners. I'm John Evans. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of One-on-One.